innovation, unmatched cultivation tech, and telling you some badass war stories along the way. I first learned even the term dep and light deprivation from you when I was in my younger days, like finding you when I first kind of went on to Instagram. And I feel like when I think of light dep, like I think, you know, you're one of the original fucking greenhouse guys, and like the things that I've learned and the confidence that I got to get a greenhouse and to grow in a greenhouse came from these Instagram lives that I used to watch of you before there ever was Instagram lives. And I talk about like that splinter effect and all these things. And I can't imagine how many people you've inspired over the years to try to like grow in a greenhouse, and the tech you've helped out with and just all that different shit. And I'd love to first talk about like those earlier days and like how that even started.
Yeah, no, first of all, it's great to be here, and it's great to see you and all this cool stuff you're doing now.
Thank you,
and
brother.
You've come a long way, and I just want to recognize you for that. And I
Thank
also
you.
appreciate what you just said. It's hard for me to really even believe or to understand maybe the impact that I might have had. Like I really sometimes,
And you're still having that impact. Like
yeah, and it's
today.
hard for me to swallow that pill sometimes because I feel like I'm just doing something or my thing or whatever, and I don't really rely on making an impact as much as I just like doing what I'm doing, and in turn I've made these impacts, I guess, and things, and people have come to me at the Emerald Cup and places and thanked me and stuff, and it's really humbling. I didn't expect, that's not what I got into this for.
Right.
So it's weird for me as it is, but yeah, I appreciate what you said, and I'm glad because I was trying really hard back then, you know, like I was going and doing things that I normally in my life didn't think I would do to try to get attraction for the business. And in turn, it definitely helped my personal brand, but I was really just trying to get the company noticed so that we could make some moves, sell some greenhouses, and, you know, get everything going like we did. And
How did that all start? Like when you're from Grass Valley originally?
no, I grew up in Linden, California, which is east of Stockton, a small farming community.
Okay.
My family moved there and started farming there in 1862.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's like fucking pumping through your veins.
Yeah. I grew up on a tractor at 9 years old, working on the farm, and it's a big farm. We had nice tractors. Some of them had air conditioning and things, so it wasn't like I was. Sometimes the vision that you have of a farm might be a little bit, old school or homestead. This was
Right.
a pretty progressive farm, and my family was really pioneers in a lot of things of irrigation and harvesting techniques and stuff like that. My grandfather designed the first automated walnut shaker, and so there was a lot of rich history there for the farming. But like when I got it to turn 18 or older in high school, before 18, I guess, I got into weed. And they weren't into it whatsoever. And it was really hard on me. And I didn't know that was kind of my lifestyle, but it was starting to be. And they weren't into it. And so, like I was saying earlier to you, when I turned 18 and I could move away and maybe go to college or do my own thing or whatever, I went to Humboldt.
Wow.
I was like, I'm going to go where the weed is. Like,
so you knew like there was that buzz early on that that's where you go, the Emerald Triangles where things are popping.
yeah. So in 92, I moved to the Triangle with two of my buddies, and we got a place in Arcata, and we just fucking tried to figure it out. Like we messed around with the College of the Redwoods and playing that little game for a minute, but it didn't last. And we just met lots of growers, and some of the people that we came with or came up to visit us ended up being growers. And at that time in 92, people were still doing a lot of out in the patch shit. And so,
I mean, in that time, 92, I mean, people don't realize it, but like they'd put plants up in trees and do whatever they fucking could, like crazy missions being dropped off on the side of the road and pack-ins and pack-outs, and just nothing like what people think growing weed is today.
not at all. Like I used to trip and tell my buddy, I'd be like, how do you do this? Like staying out there because we'd have to pick a date to meet out on the road at a certain time.
Right.
And nobody had cell phones either. So you had to keep track of things in a different way. Watches and stuff would tell you the dates and the times of things, but if it got fucked up or you lost it or whatever, but nevertheless, it would be like, okay, I'll see you in a month at this time on this side of the road. And you'd pull up at night and all of a sudden somebody jump out of the bushes and you'd have all the food and gas and whatever they needed to go back out to the patch and continue on for another month or two. And a lot of people used to try to figure out how to silence their generators because everybody run them at, 2 a.m. or whatever. So running pipes and things into the water and boxes they would build and stuff, but it was really hard because they were going really far out there and it was hard to take shit as it was. So, I mean, it was an impressive time in 92. And to your point also, there was people definitely growing in the trees because I used to go to Southern Humboldt from Northern Humboldt and we'd go score weed and it was $5,200 a pound. You could only bring $50 bills to this one dude. He wouldn't take hundreds. He wouldn't take 20s. Only 50s. If you showed up with anything else, he'd fucking send you packing. And their weed was all grown up in the trees and it was the fire. It was unbelievable. And that's why I also earlier before my greenhouse career really loved sun grown, because the sun grown that came out of those hills and honeydew and Palo Verde and all around the Southern Humboldt area was fucking insane. Like, it blew the doors off anything that I'd ever seen before. And it just still to this day, I feel like we've kind of lost track of what some of that stuff was because we've moved ahead into
for sure
a lot of the breeding. But I was in love with sun grown, and that's when I learned about black boxing. There were dudes out there taking boxes, individually covering up plants. And I'm like, what the fuck are they doing? And this was kind of 93, 94. And they'd quick dry it too. So it was really terrible herb. So I was just like, cool thing you're doing. Like, it's garbage. But it was kind of interesting that they were forcing flowering and the photo period situation and this black boxing. I was kind of intrigued, but I blew it off and then jump ahead to 2006. And that's when my old business partner started that company, Forever Flowering. And I was getting into earthwork and paving. I got my contractor's license because I kind of thought, well, fuck, I grow my own plants, but it's like, I don't know, I need to figure something out. I'm starting a family. I'm supposed to do the thing. And so I did that for a little bit, but I ended up doing site development for the first year. And that's when the economy really took a shit too.
Yeah, it collapsed. That's when the bubble burst.
And even growers were like tightening the belt. They were like, I don't need a big fancy greenhouse. I need just a small hoop or whatever. And so that's when I was like, well, in order to get more tractor work, let me try to help you sell some greenhouses. And that's when dude was like, well, I need a salesperson anyway. And at the time, I didn't know how hands off he was. And so I was able to work with my company still, what jobs I still had going, and then try to develop the greenhouse light depth company. And so I realized the first Max Yield trade show that I went to in 06 that nobody knew what the fuck it was.
So you knew about depping though before coming to Forever Flowering?
I just knew about it from that experience of the black boxing. And I had talked to people and learned over the years, and I kind of was like, okay, this is a thing, and it was like people were doing the boxes for a while, and then right around 92 or, a lot of people would jump in the Instagram and be like, it was this and this was first or whatever. And I'm like, cool. From what I could tell, people were really starting to pull tarps and do it on a more of a scale in the mid 90s.
We couldn't really even have a greenhouse back then. Let's be realistic.
People were still growing in the trees, or they would tie shit down on. If you talk to Joey Berger about what they were doing around Heartwood, they had these massive plants that they'd start with them tied down to chicken wire. So they would have a plant that normally would be 14 feet tall, but it would be on the ground under this chicken wire all spread out, and super sick tech that they did. And so, people started getting the balls to actually go out and put a greenhouse before they could throw a tarp on it. And so I'd heard about it. And then 2006-07 came around, and I was like head first into this new company doing this new thing that nobody else was doing. And so I was kind of inspired by that too, because I was like, well, fuck, we're the only ones at this whole Max Yield trade show that are doing a greenhouse that does this light depth thing, while everybody else is running around with lights and nutrients and all this other shit.
It's pretty wild at the same time to take that initiative and base a company around something so illicit. And it wasn't like 2015 or 14 or 13. Like, that was scary fucking times. And I mean, I will give dude credit for having the idea and the thought to go, and the money to go put something in to start something like that. Like, I definitely benefited from it, and I appreciate it because it helped me get to somewhere.
But it was really a struggle at the time, and nobody was really buying shit. And I remember the first dude or second or third dude that bought one of the greenhouses at the time, because they were over 100K too. So
Yeah.
it was like big money.
So you guys went right into like full on automated depping, like from the beginning. Like
That was the
his
first
goal.
Yeah, that was the first thing that he did. He didn't offer hoops or tarps or anything. It was like a package deal of a fully automated greenhouse or nothing.
Wow.
And so that's why it was hard for me to sell too, because we had this thing that was kind of new to everybody, even though the growers in the triangle and everybody
And
knew about
growers
dep.
like they need to see something done and they want to see it done a second time. And growers are
There was
weird.
no
like,
demos. Like
Yeah.
we had I was like struggling. Like I fucking pictures, whatever I could do. And then somebody would bite. And one time, one of the dudes that bit, he was actually the second greenhouse he was getting. Baller at the time back then in 2007, 8, like 6 properties, crushing, would just put
Damn.
his money in the fucking bank and then come write a check. And I was like, wow, that's not good.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. And so I did the site development, cut the pad. And I remember we were having lunch one day and this dude goes, we're carpooling. We all lived in Grass Valley, Truckee, fucking Colfax, but we were commuting all the way over past Placerville to the Somerset area. And I remember it was a far commute for everybody. I had a brand new truck. I was fucking like, I'm driving every day. I'm not riding with anybody. You can ride with me, but I'm fucking loving this.
Exactly.
You know? And I'd show up with my new truck on this site and it was like double gated, like nobody could come in, super fortress like. The neighbors would be walking by going, what the fuck is going on over there? And I'd just be like, I don't know. And the propane tank, the service power, everything was out at the road. Nobody could come in.
Hundreds of feet
and
of
the dude
piping and everything.
He wouldn't let the concrete trucks go up to the pad. He would only have them go to the staging area. So then we had to have concrete trailers. No, we'd have them dump into those trailers that had the little dump bed, you know, the ready mix trailers.
Yep.
We had an army of those, and the concrete guy was like, what the fuck is going on? I can drive up there. And I go, I know you can, dude, but he doesn't want anybody up there. And he goes, well, what the fuck is going on? Because you could tell money was being spent like crazy. So finally I just thought of something. I go to the truck driver, I go, he's going through a divorce right now, man, and he's going to spend all his fucking money before she takes it. And he goes, oh, fuck yeah. And he turned the truck up and he goes, let's go. You know, that kind of shit. And I was like, ooh, that's the
genius, bro.
Yeah.
The amount of shit we had to come up with on the spot in different circumstances, you know? Because if there's any pause, it gets you. Mm-hmm. Like people just like, you have to be
flow.
Exactly.
It's got to be natural.
Fluid.
Yeah. And so I just
like water.
Yeah. And when I said the divorce and he's got all this money and she's going to take it, he was like, let's fucking
genius.
Yeah. And so eventually I was done with my part of doing the pad, and
he went full on concrete fucking
50
pad
by 120
like,
greenhouse. This was the biggest one we'd ever done at that time.
And he did a concrete pad too?
Well, all the pier holes took a shitload. So a 50 foot by 120, there was fucking massive
like 3
pier
or 4
holes.
trucks, right?
Easily. And so, and all the gravel that had to come in. And so fucking, it was snowing one day and I was done with the job. I wasn't going back anymore, but I was with the sale for, it was one of my first sales. And then there was installers. And actually at the time, Vital Garden Supply, Brian was the installer. And so he had his crew out there, but it was a snowing that day. So the job was shut down. This one dude that happened to live in Placerville was like, I'm going to go check the job. And out of the bushes came the feds.
Wow.
Jumped on him. And at the same time.
So it wasn't even finished.
No, not even close. And then all of a sudden, it's simultaneously that morning, all the property, 5 other properties got their doors kicked in. All the crew that was that I was meeting with at the job, they got all their doors kicked in, but me and a couple other people didn't. And I was like, what the fuck? And it was like panic of everybody's cutting dreads and fucking, I was taking my greenhouse down. Fabian from TG Genetics came and got my greenhouse because I was like, dude, I'm taking this down. Come get it the fuck out of here. He showed up with a U-Haul the same day, took it down. And I was just like, what the fuck? So then we went and met with a bunch of attorneys and they're like, look, they've been watching that dude probably for 2 years. The feds don't fuck around. When they have something, they have something. And you guys just showing up made it seem like maybe you were part of the deal. And so they went on a hunch just to check you guys out. And since there was nothing, there'll probably be nothing. And I was like, okay, that's how that works, really? Well, dude ended up doing 9 years and the property didn't get seized. It got looted.
Wow.
Like people went and scraped the gravel up off the ground,
way.
taking greenhouse parts. And I remember somebody calling me eventually going, hey, we just bought this property and it's got this frame on here. And I ended up selling the depth curtains a second time to the same fucking greenhouse or whatever.
That's amazing. They were so hardcore on asset forfeiture. Like It's amazing they didn't take
I
his
couldn't
property.
believe they didn't take. He lost it to foreclosure, but they didn't seize it, and so it just turned into a big loot fest. People pulling the wire and fucking.
Damn.
It was crazy.
Who was making those greenhouses back then for you guys?
Cravo, a company out of Ontario, Canada, and that's where I learned all my tech, like the stuff that I explain. You know, I made it. I catered it to cannabis and learned a lot because I at a certain point also I was like, I got to buy a hoop and start pulling tarps. I can't sell these things and talk to people if I'm not pulling fucking tarps and growing good weed myself. And I already had an indoor growing, but I needed the hoop. So I was doing all the depths and following basically what the greenhouse, because also the greenhouse company was like, look, we're so big and we're doing shit internationally that we're not going to fuck with you little cannabis people anymore.
That Canada market's huge. Like all the companies seem like they first came out of Canada.
Pretty much. And so when they said we aren't going to fuck with you guys anymore, and dude was like, we're not selling tarp. And a lot of people used to call going, can you sell me a light depth tarp? And I go, no, we only sell greenhouse packages. And it just got to the point where everybody wanted everything but a greenhouse package. And I was like,
because they think they can like piecemeal it together
yeah.
themselves.
And I go, well, dude, look, these greenhouses are expensive. They don't really want to fuck with us anymore because they're not big enough greenhouses people are buying. Let's sell all this other shit too. And so next thing you know, we're buying rolls of fabric and I'm out in the fucking parking lot rolling shit out and cutting it and boxing it up and, you know, fucking going to the mail place and sending shit off, you know, like fucking doing whatever we could to build up the company and sell something and make some money. And that's when we went to Agritech, the greenhouse company in Bay Area, Pittsburgh, California. Yep. And they helped us. Yeah, they helped us make the next 2.0 depth kit. But a lot of the greenhouse companies just sell steel and they're good at manufacturing and they're good at telling you what their last client did or the success of another client.
But that's as far as it goes.
With another crop in another fucking land, you know, or town or whatever. So it didn't really translate. But Cravo did all their experimenting and scientific work out in the field with their greenhouses in potted plants, bedded plants, in the ground. You fucking name it, they did it. And so I read their books, followed their shit, and I tried to apply a lot of that to cannabis. And that's why, you know, the Cravo greenhouse, the roof opens for a reason, because when you close the roof, you have solar gain. And so we were working with greenhouses off the grid. Not everybody had power. And so the idea to cool the plants and not the air was the idea because of the diffused greenhouse cover.
Right.
So by opening it up, you could get the sun. And when the sun got too hot, you close it part of the way, but not all the way. And it cools the plants and the greenhouse won't overheat. So I was like, well, we got to apply that to other greenhouses. And so that's how we were just like, okay, we need the greenhouses with the ridge vent and the roll up sides and the diffused cover on the top. And that way it fucking did the same thing. It didn't open up like the Cravo house, but it did the same thing and concept wise. And so then we were like, okay, let's apply it to hoops. And that's why we're like big ass doors on the ends and roll up sides and a diffused cover. And we can roll with the hoops. And then when Instagram came up, we finally built that property to have demo greenhouses and people could come kick the tires.
And that had to be a game changer.
It was, but it was only for the first year. You know how cannabis is. Every year is fucking different.
It is.
So
you can't project anything on a fucking. You could have an amazing year and it's fucking crickets the next. It's so weird.
That's why that demo property was like the saving grace, and the parking lot was full. People were pulling in, looking at green. Like we couldn't have enough people helping to like have people, you know, the people that were coming to see the greenhouses and look at the equipment and all the different things and cut the fabric. And it became 70% of our business to do just the fabrics, the
Crazy.
blackout curtains. Yeah. Oh shit. That tastes pretty good.
Doesn't that?
And, the next year or 2 years later, fucking nothing. Nobody was buying fabrics and
What
curtains.
year was that?
I would probably say around 2014-ish or, 15. It started because all the garden shops started carrying plastic. You know what I mean? Like if we were the first and the only for a little bit, and then time changed, and next thing, garden shops and all these other people had access, so they didn't have to come to us anymore.
I remember my very first, I saw them like in 2013, and I saw that, and I'm an indoor guy, and I was like, fuck, dude, this thing, I was mesmerized by just the look of this structure and fantasizing about seeing this open, and they had the website where like the whole thing was the greenhouse, and I remember I'd go home every fucking day and like look at that greenhouse and be like, dude, I'm going to have one of these one day. I'm going to have one of these one day. I'll never forget. It was like, I didn't even have the money to buy one, but I called anyways. I'm like, hey, I want to buy a greenhouse. And they're like, whoop-de-whoop, you know, this greenhouse is $75K. And I'm just like, oh my God, $75K. And I was like, okay, like, so what's the plan? I just like roll in there and pay for it. And they're like, well, you know, I'll never forget this. The guy's like, well, we have a champagne room. And I was like, a champagne room? Like, what the fuck is a champagne room? You know, and he's like, well, champagne room is, you know, where you can come by and we'll go in the champagne room and, you know, make sure that it's everything you want and you can pay for your greenhouse. And I was like, wait, so like I can't just pay for it? And he's like, well, are you paying with cash? And I was like, yeah, of course I am. And he's like, no, you can't just buy one. You got to like come into the champagne room. And I'm like,
the fuck?
What the fuck? And he's like, you know, there's a 15% fee for taking your cash, you know? And I'm like doing the math and I'm just like, fuck, man, how am I going to afford one of these things? You know, but like I had to have one, you know?
Yeah, no, it was a fucked up situation because
and money was way different then too. Cause like all eyes were on us.
Oh.
And so what? You're going to be a fucking, and especially in places like Grass Valley, Mendocino County, Humboldt County, like the banking system was not on our side by any fucking means.
And everybody that we worked with wanted to check. Nobody wanted cash from us.
Exactly.
You know, I couldn't go to global companies and go, hey, I got fucking cash.
Exactly.
They were like, who the fuck? They don't even know what that is.
Right.
And so, yeah, if we could have just sat there and said, we'll take cash, no sweat, we probably would have doubled our fucking, you know, sales. But we had to be, you know, smart because the banks would shut us down. Like we went through banks left and right. And when you get merchant services and a bank shut down in the middle of the busy season or whatever, it is fucked.
You can't process a payment.
No. And it was really hard. And we'd go through banks for a month, like 4 banks at a time. And it was insane. And so what ended up happening is some dude came to the business partner and goes, hey, you can be a private membership. It's legal. It's all this shit.
Really?
Yeah. And so they were like, you know, talking about like, even like Costco at one time was a private membership and they only took cash, you know, you can only, they didn't fucking take any fucking cards at one time. And so I was kind of like, oh shit, you know, like and so the dude wasn't an attorney, but he worked with one or whatever and had all this shit to be these legal fucking private memberships where you're allowed to take cash, and signing up for a membership, you get a bonus or a benefit. And I guess that was the greenhouse is how they looked at it. And so we were still taking that cash, whether it was legal or not. That wasn't my deal or problem setting it up. We were still taking that cash as legal cash to the bank. And then the bank goes, well, you know, we're like, we're a private membership. And they're like,
we don't give a fuck.
Fuck your membership, you know? And so we just had a tough time constantly with banks and things, and the cannabis industry being cash heavy and getting people to turn things into checks or payments that we could take. And so that's why the champagne room kind of existed, because part of the private membership was that it had to have its own room to go do these dealings. It was like its own office within an office.
Right. The member only club.
And it was hard to tell people that. And then on top of that, for taking the cash, we had to fucking like trickle it into the bank, which took time and money. And so dude wanted to charge people when cash used to give you a discount. You know, we were turning it into, well, it's a processing fee with more money to try to get people.
But it, and that's what's hard for people, I think, is they're like, well, I'm buying this. Like, you're like, but you don't understand the back end. Like, it's so weird how our whole system's built on cash. And then from like the very beginning, it's not a cash friendly system. You know what I'm saying? Like for me growing up in Mendo and weed and being in the game, like the first time I bought something like outside of like my area and outside of getting loans, me and Owen went to Oregon to buy a boat. And like we took a big fucking bag of money up there, and that was a weird situation. Like I remember going back, I was really scared that we were going to get our money stolen, and not because of this guy, but like what transpired. We're in this guy's house and everything's cool, and we take the boat. It's $100,000. I'm like, dude, we'll take it.
Yeah.
This is fucking sick. And I fucking break out a bag, and dude, when I put the bag on this dude's table in his house, he got hella fucking weird. Oh. He wouldn't even look at it. I'm like, dude, like, let's start counting. And he's like, dude, I can't do this. Like, I feel uncomfortable. I've never seen. And this is dude's like, he had money, but it's all on numbers on a computer screen.
Yeah.
His whole life.
Yep.
And so this dude this dude's like, we need to go to the bank. And I'm like, what? No, bro, I don't want to go to the fucking bank. Like, I've got the money here. Like, we're going to do this deal here. And he was like, dude, I can't sell you this boat unless we go and get this money verified. And I'm like, fuck. I was like, all right, we're going to the bank, but you need to tell them it's your fucking money. And then now I'm thinking like, shit, I'm giving him the money. We're going to the bank. He's saying it's his. Once you give cash, there's no, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's a possession is
9/10 of the law, you know?
Yeah, like, dude, yeah, fuck.
So we go there. I'm sitting like in the sitting area looking at all like the glasses in the offices, and a few times like a dude pops up and like looks at me and I'm like, what the fuck is going on in there? Why is this taking so long? We've been in there 20 months or 20 minutes. I'm like scared at this point. I'm like, oh shit, some shit's gonna happen. Fuck,
some
dude.
Agent's gonna come
some
around
agents
the corner.
come in and like he comes out and the bank people are walking with him. My fucking heart is pounding. And they're like, he's like, okay, it's all taken care of, Lance. We're good to go. And I was just like, oh my God. Like I almost couldn't walk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
it's a bad feeling.
I'm like, dude, Owen, let's go get this fucking boat and get the fuck out of this state. Like head back home. But real deal, you know?
Yeah, because the banks would tell us at first, hey, we'll take the cash, and we'd tell them and show them the private membership, and they're like, no problem. Hundreds, 200K, we're fine, bring it on in. So we would show up with these bags, and they would fucking shut the doors, have all these money counters going, and I'd just be sitting there going, man, this is fucking weird. And the next thing you know, we'd get a letter going, we can't do business with you anymore. All this bullshit. And I was just like, well, fuck you. I mean, what the fuck? So I was glad to get out of that shit eventually. Like it was kind of over with.
It's
I mean,
stressful.
all the other greenhouse companies jumped in the game too. Like there wasn't
a lot of them. And then other people are buying greenhouses and rebadging them. And it's just like
it's a clusterfuck of that. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, when Josh Conley decided to jump in, he came in strong too. I mean, he was renting helicopters at trade shows and taking people around and doing all kinds of shit. And that's what it was at the trade shows. And part of that was like, how do we outdo each other on marketing and things? And so, you know, we had a billboard at one time on the 101 when nobody else did. And, you know, we did some shit, but once it got to this helicopter and certain, I was like,
proving ground shit.
Yeah, you got us. Like,
here you can have this customer.
Yeah.
So when you got your first one, your cold frame, was that the first time you were like physically depping? Like the first time you've grown weed like that?
Yeah, that was my first time depping and doing it on my own. I never helped anyone or worked on any project with anybody else. And so I did it, you know, like you did. I went to my house and cut a pad and I built it myself, and
what was it like for you, like
myself.
seeing that flower and that early harvest? And I mean, that had to be exciting for the first time in your life, seeing that.
I was loving it. I was like, this is fucking sick. Like I already knew, you know, and was selling shit to people doing shit, but to do it myself.
For some reason, like just bang hard in the greenhouse. You'll be having an outdoor plant and you're like, fuck, dude, that thing's got heat stress and it's getting hammered down and this bitch is banging right here, you know?
Dude, and to what I used to do is start them indoors, get them vegged up pretty good till I was almost ready to flower teens, you could say, and then I'd stick them out in April, mid-April, beginning April, depending on the weather, if it was pretty good or whatever. And that first 3 weeks, I wouldn't pull tarps, and they'd start to get that pre-flowery going.
Okay.
And then I'd always make sure that May 1st, I'd be pulling tarps no matter what.
Because that would just kind of, because it's so used to indoor, it fucking goes heavy right into flower.
Really?
It sets hard.
And then when you do that first week of pulling tarps, it all of a sudden turns into this fucking fist
tight
or this
stacking.
little popcorn, you know, like boom, all of a sudden you're just like, whoa, it's on. Like, here we fucking go.
It's day 12 and it looks like you're day 23 indoor.
Yeah, dude. And so I used to have people calling me. They go, look, I do indoor and I do all these things and I'm seeing some shit. And I'm like, you know, and then people would say, man, it finishes a week earlier or whatever. And I'm like, you're winning. Like, you know, good go. Like, you want another one?
Right.
Like, fucking, and so now where we jump ahead to this area of cannabis real quick, not to switch gears, but it's kind of a good topic that you're talking about, is that A lot of growers are fucked in the Emerald Triangle right now, and people aren't looking at their weed that they've been breeding for fucking generations because it doesn't have the name. And what people are forced to do now is they're forced to be clone growers that were normally seed growers in the legacy market. And what ends up happening to a lot of these guys is they get their fucking clones early in the season like they would their seeds, same maybe size, and they go fucking plant them, and then they pre-flower and get all fucked up. And a lot of people, I mean, I feel like Mother Nature was kind of making a fucking slap on people this year, because I saw more pre-flower, re-veg and shit across the board, and even in other states that I've never seen before. And sometimes it would be in the same garden or same greenhouse, and it'd be one strain and the rest of them are doing fine or whatever it was. And so it was like super anomaly. But there has been a rough road for people that don't understand the plant from a photo period aspect and the difference between a clone and a seed, because you can put a seed out in April and grow it and it's not going to pre-flower, and a clone the same size is going to pre-flower because it's shorter days if it was indoor. And a lot of tough lessons are learned that way, and it's hard for people to switch gears and do that.
I've always felt that once you do anything indoor, that plant is jaded.
A little bit.
When you start the seeds even indoor, weird shit can happen when you go out. When you pop your seeds in those cold ass conditions outdoors, but it's outside and you do it in April or whatever it is, like they always are just true to nature and do what they're supposed to do. Anytime even when I've gotten cuts from greenhouses, production or whatever, they have never done as good going back to indoor as if you either just start something indoor or keep it there. But starting stuff outside, and like it just has a different.
It is, and that's why I see a lot of. It's weird, the genetics that are out there these days and the mass nurseries that are in California and things like that. A lot of stuff has gotten watered down, but the selections are not as hardy as they used to be because everything herms out real easy or freaks out. And that's the problem too, is that not only is it just, it's good that it's already outside, but there's a lot of nurseries that are indoor and they send stuff to greenhouses, so they automatically have a problem. But then we also see a lot of greenhouses that might be on the coast or in these cooler climates, and then they go to these greenhouses further out in the valley and it's super hot. And so it's really, the cohesiveness that we used to see, and the things used to be it'd be like, oh, it's a little bit more forgiving and shit. And I'm like, man, the forgiveness that we used to have with plants and nutrients and things has really kind of slowed down, and it's really more critical to be measured, because if you're not measured, you're not managing. And it's like, fuck. And that's why I feel like you and I maybe get the work that we do, because there's a lot of people still trying to do the plant whisperer thing out there, and it's not as easy as it used to be, and it's not easy to get to that level because you're not exposed like we were.
I learned some crazy hard lessons. Like I thought it was going to be like just, dude, greenhouses were built for me. Like this is going to be a life-changing fucking moment for me. I'm going to be on this another level in 2 years, and I was fucking humbled over and over and over and over again. Like, there's that sweet spot during the year that works fucking great. Mm-hmm. Anytime you get outside that month, there's all kinds of conditions that affect you and you would have never thought about. For years, I never took into consideration ground core temperature.
Huge.
And I'm like, what the fuck? My soil is warm. My fucking water's warm. My
lights are warm.
I'm paying for thousands. Like, dude, 5K propane bills on a little 30 by 96 a month. Like, why does this look like fucking popcorn? Mm-hmm. Dude, in like years of taking L's and thinking of that fucking core earth temperature that just fucking penetrates and changes everything.
Yeah, I used to talk people out of growing in the wintertime because they didn't have the right equipment and all the stuff needed or weren't willing to get it. And I'd be like, take it off. I even convinced people to cut plants down because they weren't going to flower. I mean, I've literally seen people take plants for months and they're never a flower, like maybe a little calyx or something or whatever, but it just doesn't happen. And so winter can be really tough. And I always hear people with their less yields in the wintertime, even in the fancy, sophisticated greenhouses. And it's funny when it comes to the triangle and things, like you even see it in where we are in the gold country. But the second round's always the best. The first round, it's got to be a good spring.
Yeah.
It's got to be
and
warm.
You got to time that
warm up.
flip fucking perfectly. Like even fully automated, everything you can think of. Like I've made big mistakes again, thinking I can pull something in February or March. No, it's like March 1st is your flip date. Like you can get a good veg in wintertime.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
But you flower and it's like going down the road on a fucking skateboard. You're like, I'm the fucking man, you know, looking at your canopy of just,
It's
bro,
beautiful.
and then you hit to flower and you're like, where the fuck are the buds?
Yep.
Day 40 and your shit looks like a fucking kernel.
I had an indoor guy call me. They were at the time, but he called me because he's indoor, was going in his greenhouse in the winter, and he goes, "Look, I'm at day whatever. The temperature's
Oh, he's
this."
doing like day 30 and like quick
Well,
flip
he
kind
was
of
like,
thing?
no, he was like, my indoor's at day 30,
Got
my
it.
greenhouse is at day 30, but my indoor, and he goes, my temperature. He went through like a half hour of all the temps, humidities, lights, DL, just kept going and going and going, and finally, I got a moment to get a word in edgewise, and I go, "What's your soil temp? You know, and water temp, root temp or whatever." And he's like, "Oh fuck, I've never looked," or what. It was fucking freezing cold. And I was like, that's why that's why your shit indoors developing and flowering and the stuff in the greenhouse isn't. And you should probably just cut that shit down because you don't have the proper heating and all the stuff to go through it. And so buds aren't all of a sudden going to appear in, February or December or whatever it was. So I go, you might as well cut your losses now that you learned. And get the right shit to go through wintertime or be ready for the spring. And they did, but it's a tough call. People don't want to hear that, but
No, because you think you just spent $150K to grow 12 to get hit six pulls.
Well,
you're looking at your buddy's garage. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? This is what I did. I came from the garage and I'm like, oh my motherfucking God, there's 10 garages in here. I'm going to smack it.
Yep. And the fucked up part is greenhouses are made for wintertime. They're not necessarily made for the fucking summer. And
They're
so
made
that's
for
why,
fucking lettuce and shit, not big old
Yeah.
fucking rock star lung candy.
or you got to have the proper radiant heating
Crazy
and the
shit.
go into it right. A lot of people thought the lights were going to be enough heat,
No.
and things like that. And so, but I got to say, every time I go to Greenhouse Megastore and meet up with those guys, seeing your huge picture of your 3 hoops with the fucking, it almost is one of the most picturesque, like beautiful pictures that I'm surprised you don't have it hanging up in here or whatever.
Hurts
but
my heart looking at that.
it probably does. But when
Hurts
you
a little
walk in
bit.
there and see that, like, man, that was a great day that you took that photo, and just the plants and the weather and the way things just looked or what. I mean, it's
I
just,
appreciate that.
man, that's a great picture, and more people should be able to see that.
One of the things it was always instilled in me, like from the very beginning, like no matter what I do, like I want it to look really as natural as something could, you know what I mean? And the saddest thing about that site is like that got built and I got 1 season there before my ticket got pulled.
That's
And it
fucked.
was like, I had the vision of the dream of seeing the grass in between them, because like that picture is beautiful, but it's bare land.
Wasn't done
I just
yet.
cut that pad. I'm thinking 2 years down the road, this is all gonna be grass. I'm gonna have stamped concrete here and
Better than a pool patio or whatever.
yeah. Remember the beginning of that year, like another rookie ass move, dude. Like I've made some of the fucking most worst basic mistakes you can as a young man and growing and just not knowing any better to like stop and really fucking think if what I'm doing is right, you know? And I got all my greenhouses set, like, and it's me and like one person. Like I get 3 of these monsters set and I'm so excited to get the fucking arches on, and I've never built one before, and
Yep.
I get my fucking arches on and I'm going to skin it, you know, and not to think ever in my mind that like the end walls need to be on, the sides need to be like, the last fucking thing you ever do is skin the top of a fucking greenhouse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I built these massive skin tight or super tight parachutes.
Right.
Dude, and it just so happened that fucking night, dude, I went, dude, I got a video. It's like, still gives me chills because it's 7:40 at night. The sun's going down. It's just me. You can hear the crickets, and I'm like filming this thing. I'm so proud of this, right? And it starts raining, and like that moment felt so magical for me. And I'm just like looking at these greenhouses, and I've been dreaming about them for years, and I'm building like fucking pristine ones.
Yeah.
And I go down to the house. It's like 8 p.m. Dude, and the next morning, like there was a big storm that came through that night. I'm all cozy down in the house and everything. And those greenhouses were at the top of my pad.
Yeah.
On a fucking hill, at the top. So all the wind comes up the fucking sides. Dude, and I fucking walked up there with my coffee, all excited, want to look at my, like how proud I am. Dude, and I got up there, Eric, and it was as if a tornado had come and went through my garden and ripped, dude, the posts were all still in the ground, but all the bolts,
Sheared them?
all the bolts that held the top hats to the post sheared off. And this one got battered, smashed into the second one. The second one just completely folded. Ground post, like those videos of those houses falling when they're framed, and just smashed the fucking third one.
I didn't even realize that happened. And I might have heard a little bit of the story,
it's
but
fucking,
wow.
It's April 1st. I'm supposed to be planting a week later, and all my plants are down there, and I was just like, gutted.
Oh, that is rough.
Fucking
gutted.
That
is rough. Well, I know that it's a fucked up thing with the wind and even trying to install them, because I went up to there was one year Kevin Jodrey wanted to do Reggae on the River and put greenhouses up to make a VIP or a smoke lounge. And we had to I went up there to install these greenhouses temporary and installed, not even cemented in, because it was like for the Reggae on the River thing. We had to take them back down, and the wind was blowing so hard that I was trying, and we were putting the depth tarps on them because they didn't need a greenhouse. They needed a shade. And I was trying to, marketing too, the wind was blowing so hard, it was taking me off the ground, holding on to the tarp, trying to put it on. And there was power lines right above me, and there was people going, dude. And I was like flying up and coming down. And I honestly thought I was going to die that day. I was like, here I am. I'm not even staying for Reggae on the River. I'm just coming up here to do this and whatever. And, we weren't doing it for money or anything. It was more for publicity and shit. And fucking, bro, I was so fucking scared. But the wind is rough on greenhouses for sure. And
danger.
Yeah.
Danger.
You got to have your shit on
and
lock.
The stories around it.
Yeah.
Fuck. Dude, the fucking, the tarp stories though are just... back then I wanted to have a podcast called Tales of the Tarp.
Yeah, that's killer. That would have been a good one.
Because like, you think you're like, first of all, you can't really plan to pull tarp. And so you're like, okay, let's hit this at fucking 6 or 7 a.m. is the best time, but no fucking contractor is available at that time. You don't want to you can't really pull a tarp this big like on your own. You got to kind of have a plan or a builder. Your builder shows up. Normally tarps are getting pulled in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. You lay it out there. You want to get hot so you can get your fucking stretch on. Dude. And once you've committed and you've started, you just got to hold on, dude.
I know. It was tough with the family too, because there was a certain time where I was doing my dep, and after work and after school, it's time to go hit the boat, and we'd be out on the boat, and it'd be 5:30 or whatever. I gotta go, and they'd be like, "Well, fuck," like every day, and I'm like, "Yeah, like fuck." So I mean, it definitely can be tough, but one of the funny things was when we were selling a lot of tarps, and like it was 70% of our business or whatever. I mean, we were selling a fuckload of blackout and greenhouse tarps. Just people coming and picking them up and that kind of thing. That it was that time of the year or era, I guess you could say, that everybody was coming up with these different ways to pull tarps and shit. And I remember there was people with flag poles they'd install, and they'd have and they'd do the rope like so it would come up and then drop back down, and winch and cable systems. And these other people, we used to sell this wire that was smooth wire with these turnbuckles, and you could just drape the fabric or the tarp over the wires, and it'd be like a fucking curtain. You didn't have to hang it from grommets and do all this shit. There was a video in Oregon of this fucking farm that had tarps and wires everywhere, and there was this mama with her baby in the baby carrier, and she's running pulling these fucking tarps, and I was just like, that is sick. I just loved it when everybody was pulling tarps and doing this shit and all this ingenuity was going on. That's when I was like loving it, because like we were just trying to plant the seed of this light dep and buy shit from us or whatever. But the ingenuity and the creativity and the fails that people came up with and shit like that, it was insane. And I don't think we'll ever have a time like that again, because we've just come so far and everybody's gone through the L's and this and that. And
you can never have a time like that again. Like once progression every day, there'll never be yesterday.
True. Yeah.
So it's like, sure. That's why you have to really try to experience everything going on and watching these emerging markets. Like, there's not going to ever be another emerging market in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. Like what we're watching happen and what we're seeing, you know?
No. I mean, that's the funny thing when I go to a lot of these places, you know, in these big greenhouses and all this dep and people telling me how state of the art and what they have and all the, you know, trying to sell me on how cool their greenhouse is. And I'm like, you don't even know. Like this one dude was telling me, he's like, I don't even know who you are, but we got, you know, and it was almost like a script. And I'm like, cool fucking story. You know what I mean? And like, he actually kind of blew me off and I was like, all right. And then he was like, emailed me later going, sorry, I blew you off. Who are you again? And
they always do that.
And I don't even want to say who I am because I don't even really actually know. You know, I'm not like anybody, but when you explain it like you did or whatever and stuff. And I really worked hard to try to put Light Dep on the map. You know, at first it was for our company, but at the same time, it was like we talked about earlier, it was for the plants. Like I love seeing lots of plants and I loved seeing plants grow in different times and do people doing experience and things and economic opportunity. And, you know, it was fun. Like, I mean,
well, you did way more than just bring light or dep or attention to it. Like, I mean, you were having classes, free classes, you know what I mean? Like I remember tuning in all the time. I just like found Instagram, you know, and almost like every day after work or something, you're going around a little, the property and you guys have the littler one up top. You got the nice badass one kind of more in the front. And
I remember doing those lives.
Dude, it was like, it was just at the time I was inspired to get my first fucking greenhouse ever, you know, my little cold steel, little pullover. And like, man, I just took note. Dude, I wrote all that information down. Fucking,
that's how
you were teaching classes. Like you were not only providing like, hey, this is a Light Dep application, then teaching people, like you guys were having really classes on weekends and shit, if I remember.
Well, we were. What we did is, and that's the thing, is when all the other greenhouse companies were jumping in, we weren't the only ones. And so people, what I started realizing too is that we identified and came up with the culture. You know, like the homies all knew us, but there got to be a certain point where it didn't matter how much the homies loved us, the people writing the checks needed to love us.
For sure.
And we got to a point where the people writing the checks knew who Conley's was. They knew who RBI, they knew who all these other companies were, Agritech even. And we were getting our greenhouses from Agritech, and Agritech's like, well, fuck, we got cannabis people hitting us up now. And I'm like, okay, so or how's that going to work? And so it just got really kind of fucked up. And that's why I was like, okay, well, we need to fucking go out there and have seminars or courses or do things as a way to market ourselves.
Bring education.
Yeah. And I didn't want to public speak. I wasn't like a fucking educator. I didn't do any of this shit, but I was like, we got to fucking put our big boy pants on or whatever, however you want to call it, and go out in the world and fucking. So that's why I like linked up, like Agrotech hit me up one time, you know, the controller company, and they came to our office, and Mike and Tom came in and they go, we want to be in greenhouses. Like, you know, that's the next step for us or whatever. And I go, okay. And at the time, having something different or exclusivity or whatever was kind of important.
Meant something.
So I go, look, if we put you in our greenhouses, all our greenhouses packages or whatever, you're not selling to any other fucking greenhouse company or whatever. And they were like, cool. You know, at the time. So we've kind of helped put Agritech on the map with their controllers and the greenhouses and things. And so when we did our seminars, you know, Biotherm did all the heating for any greenhouse company. It doesn't matter who bids what job. You're using LS fabrics, you're using Quiet Air or Schaefer fans. And so it was a lot of times I'd be like, fuck, doing all these quotes and working with all my partners and ancillary businesses. And I'd be like, not get the job. And I'd talk to them about something else. And they're like, yeah, we got that job. And I'm like, oh yeah, you always get the jobs, even if we don't.
For sure.
And so
they come from us.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, we're going to go on the fucking road with Agrotech, Biotherm, and fucking, I forget who else at the time or whatever, and just do these like meet the pros or whatever we could call them somewhere. We even did some with Kevin Jodry and, you know, soil people. It kind of evolved over the years to different seminars, but we did them for free. And we went to the fucking Colorado Convention Center and all these different fucking places to do this shit. And it kind of helped, but at the same time, inadvertently, what it did is it kind of, because I was willing to be on the front lines, business partner wasn't.
Right.
His company, not mine, but I was treating it like it was mine.
You were acting like a partner.
And so when all that Instagram shit and all the public speaking happened, then I started going, well, at the seminars, I started signing up for all the trade shows, because all the cannabis trade shows have a spot where it says sign up to be a speaker. So I'd sign. The only place that didn't accept me was MJ BizCon. They were like, you've spoke everywhere else. It's not unique, nothing new. We're not having you type of thing.
They knew who you were, though.
Yeah. And then they wanted 10 grand or something eventually. And I was like, I'm never going to speak at MJ BizCon then. Fuck it. I don't care. And not that I needed to, or it was like the hallmark for me, but it was just part of my, sign up, go, speak.
Right.
And so when I did all that shit inadvertently, it made attention to me. So when I left the company, everybody was like, Eric, like,
you're the greenhouse guy.
yeah, you even had me out.
For sure.
So I was like, cool, like, fuck. I was, so thankfully all that shit worked out inadvertently for me more than it did for the greenhouse company, I think. And so I'm super thankful that I did all that stuff, and as uncomfortable and as weird as it was going out there. And I was speaking to rooms of nobody sometimes. There'd be 3 people, you know what I mean? And it looked good for the gram. It looked good on the program guide and the fucking book. Sure. Sometimes a magazine catch a snap.
And just the practice of getting out and talking in front of people, because we're not making money if we're not taking it out of someone else's pocket. I mean, that's the truth. Like, so I know that I have to go out and convince people or be doing something that makes them want to spend their money with me. And then I want them to feel that same value. So, like, especially when you're self-employed like we are, we have to go get it ourselves.
Yeah, and you can't sell something to people without educating them on it or knowing how to use it or doing it yourself,
sure.
like you do. Like everything you sell, you use or whatever. It's part of your program and stuff. And so that's what makes it easier or more, I don't know, makes us, I guess, in some ways more easy to believe or easy to work with, because we're not selling you on something.
No, we're just telling you how it works, and this is the best thing there is.
Yeah.
Really, yeah. It ain't no motherfucking snake oil.
No, fuck no.
So I remember there was like a special greenhouse you guys built, I think, somewhere out in Spy Rock of its first of its kind. I don't remember what it was. I remember this special post, but there was something special about this greenhouse you guys done. Do you know the greenhouse I'm talking about?
Well, it was probably it might have been the one in Branscombe. But at the time, the Cravo greenhouse was more unique than any other greenhouse, because there weren't greenhouses at that time that the roof opened, the sides opened, and it was like an outdoor grow, and then you could close it up and then add a double layer, a next layer of the depth to it that was automated. And so that used to blow people away. And that was the main greenhouse we sold for the first few years. But like I said, as the economy started to tank and greenhouse people started tightening their belt, not the greenhouse, the economy started to tank and growers were tightening their belt, we had to pivot to the hoops and gothics and other things. And that's why, when we started working with Agritech, it wasn't like anything out of the ordinary greenhouses. Most of them were fairly the same from one company to the other. The manufacturing practices were different, but from the outside looking in, it was a hoop,
right,
or a gothic or whatever. But, there was things, I don't know, along the way, we were the first at so many things. There was a lot of pivotal moments, it's hard for me to kind of reflect, because I was just in the middle of just trying to make it and make shit happen. That, we found the light traps that everybody uses in their greenhouses. We were the first ones to find those, find Dandy and say, we want to bring these into cannabis. Because a lot of the companies at the time didn't want anything to do with cannabis. But if you said, hey, we'll write you a check, people come to us for this, we'll order it. We're not a cannabis company. It's not
even like they're against it, but they don't even want the affiliation or see other people doing business with cannabis.
And that's why I said, look, you're going to get a check from our company, not grower guy, from us. And we're not a cannabis company. We're a greenhouse company. And they'd be like, well, we do like money. And I'd be like, okay, let's strike a fucking deal.
What were the light traps being used for originally before they were light traps?
For 30 years, they've been in the poultry industry. And so light
just doesn't.
They dep chickens. I didn't know this, but there's a lot of things that are depped. Poinsettias are the most common, but it's a shade that you apply. It doesn't have to be that dark. And there's other, like the forestry industry. In order to make pine cones and force trees to go into dormancy, they dep them. And so that's how the forestry industry in the early 90s was actually creating seed for replanting forests. And so then when you jump to the chickens, because we go, what the fuck? And they go, yeah, we've been in business 30 years making these light traps. And what I found out is the poultry industry for the fryers, the ones that, you know, that you eat, not the egg layers. You know how everybody always talks about GMO chickens or the stories that they can't even support their own body weight and they can't walk. They're all fucked up. And maybe there's some truth to that, but the real truth is that the fryers, when they turn on the lights, they peck and eat. When they turn off the lights, they sit down.
Wow.
So they turn on and off the lights all day to make the chickens eat and rest. So they get so fucking fat so fast that they can't support their own body weight. And so without having all these light traps, they can't make a chicken house totally dark and run all these fans just like a greenhouse, negative pressure. And all the methane or the fucking gas from the piss and shit is, you know, isn't healthy for the chickens. So they got to move a fuckload of air and no light. And so we learned a lot about light traps and fans, and a lot of the fan companies were already making fans ready or that were used to light traps. But once we brought them into cannabis, the fan companies really stepped it up. They actually oversized the motors from 0.5 horsepower to 1 horse. They actually made the housing for the light traps to fit inside instead of bolting them onto the outside like we were doing. And so it was kind of crazy because as cannabis started to pick up, the companies were finally doing all the things we needed them to do years ago, basically. And we'd ask them to do, and they'd be like, we don't fuck with you guys and, you know, whatever. And next thing you know, it turned into such a dominating industry. We were the fucking little guys.
Right.
And I was like, I'm getting the fuck out of here.
I think that I also saw another greenhouse at one point where you guys built some kind of system that hid what was inside the greenhouse, like some kind of shadowing effect or something. There was a greenhouse on the side of a hill that like a helicopters, you know.
People did some crazy shit. Like some of it, I would sell the greenhouse and the installers and the buyers would do their own kind of out in the hill kind of thing. So I don't technically know all the shit that went on. Like there's people that know more shit about what happened with the greenhouses in some cases than me, but we also started fucking with a green greenhouse cover at one time because people were like, we want to try to hide the hoops better and shit. And so we had a green greenhouse cover. There was other people that were like, well, we don't want to put depth covers on the side of our greenhouse because then the cops flying over or whatever are going to know that we're growing cannabis if we have this tarp laying on the ground. And I would go, you're in the middle of fucking nowhere with hoops everywhere. A tarp laying on the ground is the giveaway.
Right.
Like, let's be honest. Like,
you got a 14 greenhouse on the side of the hill.
Yeah, no power, and there's barely a.
But you know, like you're trying to do only what you can handle. You know, like, and you're telling yourself like, oh fuck, as long as they don't see the shadow of a plant, they're never coming.
Yeah,
I said that for years.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of things that people used when I'd talk to them to talk them off the ledge, or you know, to convince them or whatever. Or I'd hear why or what reason they would do things for whatever, you know, and I'd just be like, oh, okay, like everybody had a different trip.
Right.
You know, like, and everybody what used to call in the beginning years to be like, yeah, I'm growing tomatoes. Like, it was amazing how many years people still called it tomatoes. And, you know, we were in the 2000s, you know, it was 06, 08, even though it wasn't that legal, we were still way past 96 or whatever. And so fucking, yeah, it was a trip.
And then from there, now you started Greenhouse Advisory Group.
Yeah.
Where I've seen you on some amazing projects all over the world, the United States too. Like, what was that like transitioning into traveling and being away from home and this whole kind of, you know, new business?
The traveling kind of started slowly because I was doing the trade shows once a year. And when my first kid was really little and we were new parents, even the first trade show once a year was kind of tough for a couple of days. And my wife had to hold it down, and she did a great job, and she's always been super supportive and, you know, could see kind of the long-term goals and wanted to help me through. And so then it turned into more trade shows. And then it turned into traveling to try to get people to buy greenhouses or showing up at places and things like that. And there was a while there was so many trade shows and golden tarp and emerald cups and things in between that I was fucking gone a lot. And that was already kind of getting difficult. And then the kids got older. we had our second kid and things got a little smoother or whatever. And it was a funny story because I had a bro when we first started doing those traveling seminars, we'd be gone a couple days, and that was outside of the trade shows too. And I remember my first kid was small, and my wife, and the kid would cry, and my wife would be like, "Oh, it's going to be tough without you for a couple days. And, we'll make it." And I just feel bad about it and shit. And I'd be out there with all the other dads and guys going to these Airbnbs and shit. And we'd be kind of having fun, but I'd feel guilty.
For sure.
And I remember this one dude, he was older, Scott Zarambi from Mendocino. He's got a dirt store out there, I forget what shop he has in Fort Bragg or whatever, garden store. He's been there forever. And I remember we're all getting in the Airbnb, and he looked at me, he goes, "Yeah, it was fucking killing. My wife packed my bags practically for me, walked me out the fucking door and sent me on my way." And I was just looking, I'm like, wow, man, that's amazing. I don't know if I was like, I can't get out the fucking door. It's like, just, and I'm on the phone, and like, it's a whole thing. And here I am now, older, my kids are older, and my wife's practically like going, "Don't you have a trip to go on? Like, get the fuck out of here, like, you're home too much," and that kind of shit. Cause I'm a little like, I get going, but fuck, the traveling is tough because of the health and the balance in the family. Sure. But I made a point to always be home on the weekends, to always, no matter what, like, and once COVID hit, I gave up. I was burnt out on trade shows, and I kind of gave up on trade shows. I don't give a fuck about them anymore. Like, I might go to one or whatever, but I don't care to be at them, and I don't need to sign up to speak at them. And I just don't, it wore me out. And it's a lot of bullshit. It's everybody drinking alcohol and fucking around, and it just got weirder and lamer and lamer.
They don't feel very productive.
No, and everybody fakes the culture, and it's just like, I'm good. And so fucking the traveling got beefed up once COVID hit. I didn't lock down one time. Like March of 2020, my business like took the fuck off, and I was on the road more than I'd ever been, living in hotels and driving on the road when nobody else was on the road, and no one's staying at the hotels. I mean, I was staying in Monterey the whole time of lockdown. There was nobody out. Nothing was open, in and out, nothing. And I would go home to the family on a Thursday night, drive back to Salinas or Greenfield on a Monday, and then back home on the Thursday. Nobody on the road. I'd go home, do all the shopping for the family because I was the one that was out in the world. So, everybody freaked out. I'd be like, I'll go to the store. You guys stay home. And so it worked out fucking great, actually. Like, we were super productive. My wife worked on her business. I was doing mine. The kids were like, fuck school. We're having, so it was kind of cool. It was working out. We had a pool property. So like everybody was I built a huge victory garden.
Badass.
And I just hit the road and I didn't fucking, I ended up being in Arizona and Florida and I would travel hardcore. A lot of people I met over the years didn't really have the grit to travel like that. To drive up to Humboldt, people would be like, "Well, I got to get a hotel room, stay the night." I'd be like, "I'm fucking driving. I'll be home in 14 hours." And then when I go to Florida, it turned into where I was going there 3 days a month, and they turned it into 1 day a month because they switched me over to their Arizona facility to do that one 3 days a week, or 3 days a month. So when I flipped to Florida to 1 day a month, I'd fly there. It'd take all day to get there on a Monday, and then I'd be on site all day Tuesday, and I'd fly home Tuesday night and be back to taking kids to school on Wednesday or whatever it was. You know what I mean? And people would be like, "You went to Florida for the day?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Fuck yeah, I went and got that bag.
Yeah, and so it's hard, but I mean, if you fucking want it enough and you love what you do enough and you fucking kind of time some things right and maybe fly first class if you can, and it makes it easier on the body and you get shit done, and like you said, you fucking make that bag and you're home.
Yeah. What's your opinion on wet wall cooling versus ridge vent side opening, and where do you draw the line as far as like being a cultivator and going one way or the other?
It's cool that you asked that because I used to draw a line and I don't anymore. Like a lot of the philosophies and the ideas and the way that I was brought up, I guess, in the career or the game of greenhouses is totally changed, and it's different now because not everybody's in Humboldt or off the grid in these other places that we started out with our cannabis culture. Our cannabis culture was growing in areas that were higher in humidity where wet walls didn't work. And so through the majority of my career, there was a way that we did things, and that was because of all these other circumstances. And then with legalization, those circumstances have changed, and we've moved into existing greenhouses. We've moved into greenhouses that nobody ever dreamed would exist, maybe outside of cannabis, that are like too crazy, got too many bells and whistles that are hard to navigate and dial in. And so I'm fine with wet walls, but I like to have as many tools in the toolbox or bag as possible. So I still like natural ventilation and mechanical ventilation. You know, like the more stuff, the better. I still am a big fan of diffuse covers, but I got a lot of my mentors and people that are like, no, it's clear all the way like glass. And I find that, you know, greenhouses have a throttle, and some growers can do full throttle and other people can't. And it's dialing in those small little tiny fucking details.
I mean, diffused is definitely where it's at. Like, just from a standpoint of quality and color, and I mean, I've had clear tops, and diffused has always taken it. You know, and now, you know, I had you come out to the property. Shout out to Greenhouse Advisory Group. If man, people hit me up, I recommend tapping in with Eric. If you got York greenhouses out in Oklahoma, this is the man to fucking tap in with. He'll come out and help you out. But just from things that we talked about that day, and some like, we're on a level at this point where like baby steps are like what we're trying to achieve. You know what I mean? Like, you're not getting these big gains. You're trying to find all these little gains. And so we had you out and talked about temperatures and how can we get our wet wall colder? How can we get better airflow through the pads? All kinds of different things. And I implemented all of it.
Coming up in this culture, we all think of each other a lot, like you were saying.
So like, we're on these levels, and it's just like, how can we, these tiny little improvements of perfection, you know what I mean? And wanting to have the best thing. And it's like, there's very minor adjustments to try to make things better. You know what I mean? I was in the headspace of like, what if I get like a little 100-gallon tank and I put a water chiller on this, and I'm just recirculating this water and pumping this. Well, chilling the water help make my fucking greenhouse cooler. Like,
people do add a lot of chillers and those things to make it cooler, but sometimes it's the airflow. Sometimes I'm starting to find out too much airflow.
Oh, because it's too fast.
Too fast.
It's
not taking enough moisture. And so it's too fast, even though 1 air exchange per minute is what a National Greenhouse Manufacturers Association standards goes by. But the air exchange, because I'd taken some stuff that I thought was restricting airflow and it was going to make the greenhouse cooler, and it ended up fucking warming it up. And I was like, oh, fuck.
Some weird shit happens like that.
One of the things I found when I was in Arizona, they had light traps over the fans because they were old school fans. And the light traps have a small spacing for the air to pass and not the light. And then the brownouts, they're called, are a bigger spacing that would go over a wet wall, because a wet wall with a 6-inch or a 4-inch pad still reduces some of the light, but not always enough. And so with the brownout, I was at that site and I thought of you. I was like, oh, you're having the fucking coolant chiller, and just to make it better so you can take the shade screen or whatever down. I found those examples that were going up, so I fucking took a picture and fucking just texted it to you while I was out there on the site, and you're like, oh fuck, that's what it is, or whatever, you know. And that's just kind of how it is. I feel like there's a lot of us that kind of communicate. We're not in touch all the time, we don't talk every day, but when something comes up in a grow somewhere or something, we'll fucking text, hey, thinking of you, or hey, whatever, or hey, I found maybe a little solution to this,
or something you just think is cool, and you're like, oh, Eric's gonna appreciate this.
Yeah. And so it's always fun, and I always find it's kind of fun to see something and text somebody or get that text or call or whatever, and that's how we kind of operate. And so I feel like a lot of the newer culture and the corporate side and these bigger facilities, they have a lot of growers and people that have experience growing, but it's not in the depth that we came through, and they don't have the connection and the network that we do. And it makes it maybe easier for us to get more work. I don't know, but that's what ends up happening. And we go to these jobs, and I see it's a lot of mindset stuff. A lot of people are stuck in maybe one way of growing or thinking about things, and they're not able to look at it as a bigger picture.
That's another reason why I started, saying like fuck with me, pick me because I'm in the trenches.
Yeah.
Like there's a big difference between those of us who are like actually in the trenches and then everyone else who you hire and they're going to come and point and tell you what to do. And, you know, and so like, I just feel like I'm better than that. Like I'm better than the guy who's traveling and coming out and just tells you this or that. Cause like I'm here doing it. You know what I'm saying? And like, we're not just, it's not just someone with a suit and a tie where you're going to site to site to site to site. Like you've been in those trenches, you helped develop this system and cultivating it and being able to see, you know, right from wrong. Like that's who you should spend your money with as a company or an individual. If you need help, not just like who's crushing it the hardest on IG or, oh man, that shit looks crazy. Like who like is actually in there every day, hands in the dirt. You know what I mean? Like running the trench line with the fucking rifle.
Yeah, no. And that I think resonates a lot with operators and people these days because a lot of people have gotten burned from bad advice from one person to another, whether it's the homies or just, you know, consultants in general. And a lot of them try to sell shit and like, hey, if you don't use this, you're not going to be successful. I'm like, that didn't teach you anything. Like, I'll make shit work. Whatever you got, we'll try to make it work and dial it in until it proves it needs to be changed. Because usually there's room for improvement on anything anybody's doing. They're just, usually a lot of the ingredients are there. They're just not baking it up right. And you know, a lot of people speak about you when I go to sites and stuff. They're like, oh, you know, the craft farmer or, you know, David from Preferred. And I don't know David that well, mostly from IG. And I've been wanting to go out to his place forever. And I'm a huge fan of his work. And I see you guys work at things together and stuff. And so it's good to see a lot of these cultivators and people that I've always been a fan of and appreciate their work and see consistency and things like that because it's really not. You know, a lot of that doesn't happen out there. A lot of stuff on IG is really the consistency isn't there. Let's put it that way. A lot of the home runs and cool accolades are on the gram, but a lot of people don't realize that it's 9 times out of 10 not going that smooth all the time.
Right. It's very hard to get like the perfect batch every fucking time. And I think about that too with this plant. Like it's just such a different plant and so many different things respond when you're pushing it. And you can have a whole, you know, thing written out and it's the same strain and do the same thing and see different things happening, you know? And it's not just like you're row cropping and you're bro, if we could get paid on our veg, I'd be billionaire. Like I try to, you know, you think about that sometime. If I could get paid on my veg game, you know, but,
well, you know, what I see now too with a lot of the cultivators and the price, especially in California with the way things have gone. Remember back in the day, everybody used to grow, you know, the saying was, you know, you grow 3 or 4 grows or 3 or 4 patches and, you know, a couple get busted, but one makes it. And that's what saves the
one, you grow 3 patches, one for the police, one for the thieves, and hopefully one for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And so now what's happening is everybody's growing all these strains and cultivars hoping that the buyer wants 1 or 2 of them, you know, and nobody knows what really to grow because it's such this, you know, one day it's, you know, high THC, the next day it's got to have purple and so all the cultivators are just like all these different strains hoping that one of them sells.
Dude, I'm a perfect example of what you just described for my first 18 years of growing. There'd always be some buzz. Some people are getting paid and you're like, dude, if I only had that strain, you know, and every time you finally get it, the whole world already has it. And then by the time you might get it and it's still good. And by the time you harvested, nobody wants it anymore.
It's over.
I was the first one like showing up when they're like, oh, not buying anymore. We don't want it. Like,
yeah, I've been in that boat too.
And it makes me feel like it's just the wrong mentality of like trying to just chase always what you think everyone else is doing good on and trying to have what you don't have, you know what I'm saying? Versus trying to find something that is really great for you.
Yeah.
You know, that might fit in some of those market profiles kind of thing.
Yeah. As much as I think sometimes we know the consumers, we don't, we just it's really hard to pinpoint or predict or see where that's going to go, especially on the, you know, the dispensary side and things like that. I mean, I remember your greenhouses had the paint schemes on the front, but Purple Punch was one of them.
Yep.
I was thinking last night because I thought of your greenhouse because we're coming here and I was like thinking about those pictures and I was like, oh yeah, the Purple Punch. And I took a picture in front of that greenhouse before you took it down. And I was thinking to myself, where the fuck is Purple Punch? Is it renamed and it's out here? And
gone, bro.
People are running it and it's just not named Purple Punch anymore, or what the fuck? Because
it's just like, it's another one of those ones that was so fucking hype. Like, it has to be one of those one hit wonder kind of things where it was so much fucking hype behind it, and then like no one would fuck with it, no one would touch it, no one wants it, no one wants anything to do with it.
Yeah. What were the other paint schemes you had on the doors? It was
I had the watermelon miner.
Okay,
the watermelon miner. I did the watermelon Skittles.
Yeah,
dude, that shit, amazing fucking hash strain, dude. And then I did fermented watermelon extracts with that, and was foliar spraying watermelon juice, and dude, that hash was so fire. But I just, back then it's like all I could do was sell flour. I was just a flour guy and didn't know hash people, and I gave like one dude a frozen pound. I harvested like the night before I did and did one for him, and he was just like, this is a 9.7 out of 10. I've been washing for all these years. Straight
Holy
watermelon.
shit.
Dude, I root drenched watermelon juice. I foliar sprayed through day 42.
Holy
I don't give
shit.
a fuck, dude. I wanted just straight watermelon sugar terps. But the flour wasn't great. You know what I'm saying? It was one of those not like really
best.
a flour strains, you know? And then fucking my gelato house was just like straight sad, bad luck from the beginning. As soon as I painted fucking the gelato design on the front of that, the russets fucking
took over,
came in, and I'm like, what the fuck? I've never seen plants that just stop growing and start looking like they got burned,
crusty,
brown tips in this. Like, what the fuck are all these eggs? Like, there's so many billions of like those eggs that you can see some weird shit to the naked eye when you shouldn't see anything at all. And like, it was just that house.
Damn,
it was really weird. And it was just before all that shit was even new. You know, these super bugs that we had never heard of or seen. Bro, do you remember like some of the people that like it was wiping them out?
It was cruise control for so many years of not really hearing about pests and pest pressure and management. And then all of a sudden the russets really came in, and there was people talking about the county, how they dumped these predator
and
bugs
Caltrans.
on the side. And
they're trying to say Caltrans did it.
Yeah,
and
there was fucking stories left and right.
There was crazy stories.
I was like, what are we going to fucking do? You know, and
no one knew. You couldn't even see them. You'd have to have like some fucking 60 zoom.
Yeah, you can't see them until the damage is done. And we didn't scout for shit. We were like, hey, my plants look good.
Shirts off, fucking all brown, sandals, black feet.
Going to the clone room and back to the fucking flower and back and forth. And it was a whole fucking thing. And it's still getting people pretty hard. I mean, there's the pest management thing out there is definitely one of the things that keeps me busy when I go from facility to facility, because like I said, a lot of people have all the stuff and they're running the motions, but
they're like super pests also, I feel
that's true. There's a lot to be said for that. When I was in Salinas, bro, I don't know if I could kill a bug. Like, it was like, did they fucking die down here? Because it's surrounded by all the lettuce and it's such a huge ag area and the seasons change. And so like wintertime coming into spring, the thrips you're just like, everything's cool. And then all of a sudden you're like,
oh, they're fucking gnarly this year.
Oh,
they're bad. Like
and root aphids have taken
they're like
over.
This, like spray me like to the spinosad. They're just like,
That's what I said. There was a couple products because I'd done something somewhere on LinkedIn where I was like, hey, if you do this or that, or I was kind of trying to promote myself as being this pest shit or some shit, and some people got on there and ratted me out to the fucking county in Monterey that I didn't have a PCA license, because in order to advise or tell people what they should use.
How would you even know that? Like, you
or
gotta
rates
be in all
or any
kinds
of
of
this.
scumbag.
Yeah, and I got this letter from Monterey County Department of fucking Pesticide Regulations going, hey, we know that you're out there consulting and telling people what they should and shouldn't be using, and if you don't have a fucking PCA license, you're taking money from other people that are licensed in the game and this and that. And I was just like, who the fuck's ratting me out? And whatever. And what I did too at one point, and this might have hurt some feelings or whatever, there was a couple products that people would jump on there and go, oh, if you use this product, and there were people from those products. And I'm like, bro, the aphids down here drink that shit and get stronger. They don't fucking, maybe wherever you are or something that works, but up here or whatever, you gotta be aggressive and use real shit. Your fucking cannabis, you can spray it all the way to harvest shit.
This is the UFC down here. Like these
I saw the aphids get bigger after I applied that shit. So don't tell me. And then I get this letter in the mail or whatever. So it's like, fuck. Okay. So it's kind of crazy what you can say and what you can't say when you're consulting and trying to recommend without hurting feelings.
Well, then also like protecting yourself, I sell these speed controllers and I was like telling people to wire them up, and like my bookkeeper like said something and was like, oh, I don't think you should do that. And I was like, what? Like, fuck that. That's nothing. So I asked the lawyer and he's like, man, you can't be given any electrical advice, Lance. Like, you shouldn't even be given low voltage electric device. Like,
unless you have a license.
RJ12. Like, I can't tell them the control master and how to run these. And they're like, well, it's better you don't. You just stick to plumbing because gluing PVC and shit, you're pretty safe, but you can't tell people how to wire a switch. What happens if you told them to wire that and then they say that they followed your instructions and their box caught on fire and then the garage burns down? And so you got to be careful of when you go into someone's facility, like, oh, dude, you need to, you know what I mean? Like, I got to be careful. I was careful, like just what I'm telling them or what I suggest that they should change based on what it looks like. Are they capable of doing something right, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, I didn't see any of that shit coming, but I got my ass handed to me plenty of times in the greenhouse side of things because people would buy greenhouses, and especially before legalization, nobody wanted engineering done.
Yeah.
They'd just be like, hey, and we'd try to beef them up based on what we knew or whatever, but if a snow came and these greenhouses collapsed, fucking... people call and holler at me, or if we had installers that they would hire and they'd fuck up or whatever, I'd get my ass handed to me every fucking time. And I'd say the majority of my job for part of the time when I wasn't doing sales anymore was trying to fucking corral builders.
Firefighter.
Yeah. I was like, people would come to me going, we got crews. We know what we're doing. We've done it all this time. I'd try to vet, do all this shit. And they go to one job and they fuck everything up and completely blow it. And then I'd find ones that were good builders. And it was just a constant shit show because selling greenhouses was easy, but getting them built, what a fucking nightmare.
It is.
And
it's kind of crazy. Like the internal depths, like it really depends on a perfectly square structure when you've got fucking 12 moving bays and shit like that. And then you go to these shapes where it's like the fucking half, what do you call those? Yeah.
Slope, flat, slope.
The slope, flat, slope, and fucking metal's bent all in these fucking 8 different pieces, and there's drive lines and U-joints, and it might run straight for a week and one little bind up and your shit's all fucked up and lights beating through and you can't dep and you spent $150 and you're never going to get this seed. Like, dude, the installation is incredibly fucking important, like so overlooked. Like, this guy will do it for $10,000 less. Like, not where you want to save your fucking money.
No, we got buddies. We can do it. It's got plans. I'm like, no, there's a learning curve. You really should hire somebody to help at least teach you or show you or whatever. And then when you do it, you're good to go. You could probably do another one, but the first one, you're going to be fucking. And I
never want to do another one again.
No, I mean, especially the automated. I mean, the hoops, we can bang them out, but the automated, I used to have people that would go, hey, I got this company, they're a contractor, they could do it. They'd come look at it and see it standing and go, yeah, I got this. And then they'd give a bid. We'd send the truck out, and the truck would have barrels full of little parts, like barrels and barrels of brackets and nuts and bolts. And you know what I mean? Like the raw steel didn't even compare to the amount of little fucking doodads and things. And they would see that truck show up and all those parts, and they would immediately go, we're going to time and materials. That bid's no good. Or I even had contractors that would walk off the job. They're like, we're not even gonna fuck with that. Like, and so it got to a point where, like I said, I spent all my time trying to fucking deal with figuring out the builders because it got so serious to a point where, we couldn't have anything go wrong. Like the amount of Instagram and all these things and bad publicity you could get, like I couldn't have it. And so it would just be night and day trying to figure out how to make sure everything goes right with all these other companies sending shit to make this one package. Cause a lot of people be like, you're the greenhouse company. And I'm like, the greenhouse company or the manufacturer, if you want to even call it that, whoever's bending the metal that they buy, they don't make the chains that go on the drives. They don't make the drive motors. They don't make the fucking U-joints. They don't make the plastic. They don't make the fans. They don't make the control box. They don't make the plastic. You know what I mean? They bend the metal and they buy everything else. Exactly. And so it's a fucking chore. And to have everybody have everything on time and to go right and shit like that was just fucking...
It's crazy. I remember there was this guy, I forget who he was, but like when all this greenhouse shit was coming on, he's like, I'm going to buy this one from China.
Yeah.
And it was a straight, like, fucking was supposed to look like how all ours do.
The pictures look the same.
Yeah, the depths and everything. Did you ever see that post on IG with that? Do you ever remember anything like that?
I don't know if I saw that, but I knew about a lot of that happening.
Bro, it was this fucked up looking cattywampus garbage. It was nuts. It was fucking crazy. But
I might have actually, I saw one I might have seen it. I don't know, but there was some hodgepodge shit that went on because people were trying to outdo us every day.
For sure.
People would see that price for an automated greenhouse and
holy
go,
shit, we can build this.
Yeah, I'm making my own. There was plenty of people that were like, I'm going to start my own greenhouse company and show these guys. I mean, I'd get that all the fucking time. And a lot of the people that didn't buy our greenhouses, even though they were quoting and really close and I thought they were a hot lead, would have to call me to tell me, oh, I'm going with this fucking guy or China or whatever. And I'd be like, oh, fucking go ahead. And so I did have to, and I still to this day for certain jobs, because there's places I want to like consult or work at or help. Like I can see on IG, like I could fucking tell them to not use that or do this. And I'd save hundreds of thousands of dollars. And what I ended up having to do is manifest it in some ways, a lot of manifesting and thinking about it, but also waiting for them to fail. And I have to wait for things to go wrong. And people would call me and go, you know what? You were right. This shit didn't work or this went, and I'm coming to you to get it right. Whether it was buy the right greenhouse or get the right advice or whatever it is. And that still happens to this day with my consulting. Like there's places I try and want to be and try to throw a little like, something out there to somebody or something. And it doesn't stick. And maybe 2 years later, all of a sudden the fucking phone rings and I'm in the place that I was hoping to be at the beginning, but it's fine. Like I'll save money no matter what, people money no matter what, and get it right when I get there. But I'm never, when I left the greenhouse company being in sales and designs and things like that, I thought my consulting would jump right into like looking at plans and helping people with,
right.
And it has, dude, I haven't probably looked at a set of plans and everybody wants help cultivation. And I was never known for that. I wasn't like the cultivation guy on IG. I was the greenhouse guy or whatever. And so it turned into this cultivation thing, which is great. I love it and it's totally fun and I can do it. But it was just interesting to see how that went. And that's why when I go to these jobs, a lot of times people just go, oh, he's the greenhouse, or I don't know, or who are you? Or
right.
why are we calling you? And a lot of the people in the grow are be like, dude, I've seen you on, or whatever, or that kind of thing. And so that part's kind of fun.
It's because they're so out of touch.
It's a whole different world now. It's a whole different fucking world.
They go down the chain of a command. They're like, who are we going to call? Oh, I want this guy.
Mm-hmm.
You see this guy right here? You know what I've noticed is a lot of times they'll be like, bring this guy here. Like, he's coming here.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you want. Like, there's been multiple times where like, I'll go look at something and you think like you're helping them. And like, there's this, I don't know what the sense is, but like, dude, they think that they can just pay you whatever you're going to say and you're going to fucking relocate and move to wherever they are and just be their fucking grom grower and stack packs for them. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, how much do you want to move here? And you're like, that was never an option. Like I would never consider that, but like that sense of entitlement where like, oh, I want this guy and then find out how much he's going to cost to come here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's why, like we were saying earlier, there was one of those states we were talking about and they were talking about trying to get talent out there. And I was like, nobody I know that knows how to do shit wants to move to your state. I'm sorry. Like, you know, they're in Cali, they're here, they're wherever, and
And
they're
we're
growing,
older.
and
We're
you're
not
gonna
20
poach
fucking
anybody.
three. We're
yeah,
not in
they're
our
raising
20s.
families, they're doing shit. You'll be lucky for that price you want to pay someone to get them. I don't know who you'll get to come out here. Like, and maybe you want to keep me on so that I can help coach and train those people, because the talented people I know that are doing shit,
Right.
and they're not going to leave to go this fucking crazy middle of nowhere state
Right.
with less money that has, you know, fucked up water problems and all these, you know, I mean, there's just shit going wrong left and right. And they're like, you think you're going to poach somebody, or we want to like,
Or you get those messages, you're like, hey man, want to be partners in Massachusetts? I got an opportunity.
I'm
You're
like,
bro, I don't want no part of your opportunity.
I'm not going there.
No offense.
I'll come
like-
and fucking spend a couple days at a time. But yeah, the moving and that's why it's really hard. The talent pool, and for people to go to these emerging states and things, it's really tough, and it's not happening like it did. It's not, you can't replicate what happened here in another state just because it's new.
Right.
And we're not all clamoring to like pack our families up and move to fucking bumfuck. Like, we've already done that.
And
in some ways.
and to think like it's not fucking you think it's like easy to grow weed like from another state being real, you know?
Well, and a lot of the resources that we're used to having aren't there. Like, there isn't a grow gen in some of these
Right.
states yet, or there isn't, you know, and they don't have, and it's just like,
You don't have
fuck.
all your tools,
No.
all the shit you're used to, everything down to all the little things that you have at your fucking spot are never at
Yeah.
the one you're going to help and work with. And it's just like,
Yeah, being out in fucking Arizona when I was there, it was just like Home Depot wasn't even close by. Like, I was just like,
you're in the middle of the desert.
fuck, like, how do you get shit done out here, you know? And so you get creative and figuring out how to get shit done, you know? Like, I don't know, it's pretty fun, but at the same time, I can't predict the future of what we're going to run
No.
into or see, but it's a lot of kind of the same.
I feel like we're like almost in a dinosaur era where like as it's getting hotter and we see even weird shit, like it's never going to be as bountiful as it was for everyone. Like that's just not how the world operates. You know what I mean? It was so bountiful because it was so illegal, you know, if we're being real about it. And so
There was no Oklahoma at the time.
no, as this shit happens and other countries can come in like we've seen and all of a sudden be like, oh, they make money there. We have 80 people and we'll buy 1,000 acres and we'll put up 500 greenhouses. And like,
Yep.
it's just such a different industry now. It's going to continuously get harder, in my opinion.
Well, and there's not a lot of people that know how, like even me, like the crazy greenhouses and things that people have put together with this idea of where things were going, you know, maybe the hybrid greenhouses or whatever. There was one in Las Vegas I went to. Even the one in Florida I dealt with was an old piece of shit, but the stuff they put into it to make it, you know, do its thing. Like, nobody's done that before. The companies that are putting these chillers and air handlers are like, we've never done that in a greenhouse. And so the support and the staff and the people that are buying this going, well, we bought this and we need it to work. And the people that sold it go, well, we told you we've never done that before. Like, it's just not for greenhouses. And you talk to the greenhouse people and they go, well, we don't put in real greenhouse world, we don't do that. You cannabis people do that shit. And so it's like, who is going to dial this fucking thing in? How are we going to figure it out? Because nobody does that kind of shit. And the price of cannabis in California right now, you're not going to continue to build that way or try to do things that way. The cost of production isn't going to allow it. And so what do? Buy used greenhouses or buy, you know, secondhand greenhouses and not build new ones with all this crazy fucking... And part of it to blame is some of the greenhouse companies. I think the greenhouse companies watch Instagram and they go, ooh, that's a cool, you know, and so then they make this one facility with all this little shit on it. And I look at them on paper because even though maybe I'm not looking at the plans, I'm looking at the equipment list, and you look at it on paper, you go, wow, this is amazing. Like, this is the coolest thing in the world. But when you put all that shit together and you get on site and you look around and stand there, you're like, this is never going to work. Like, who the fuck, you know? And so... investors and people with money are designing and creating these facilities, and there's no growers usually involved. And if there is a grower involved, they didn't run greenhouses and things of that scale, and they're not going to be there when the first plant goes in the ground, or they're not there when the first plant goes in the ground. So it goes fucking haywire really fast and really bad. And it's not like I can come save the day, but I do try to make sense of it all.
Sure.
I feel like I can come in and bring a more sensible, eyes on the ground approach to it to tweak things and, like I said, try to make it work.
And it's not as always just thinking someone's going to come for a couple hours, point your shit out, you're going to flip it around. Like,
no,
if you've got like these are steps. There's like it's like anything else. It's like if you're like some damaged child, like and you're at the psychiatrist, like we got to go through this. We got to break down these layers. We got to fix fundamental stuff. And a lot of times, like what I've realized is like when I've gone places in the past, you're like a fucking counselor.
It is
more than fucking anything. Like you're there for like 2 hours. Someone's telling you some shit. Yo, man, hey, dude, can I pull you aside real quick, bro?
I love
Just to
that.
let you know, dude.
I hate it, but I love it.
This head guy, Todd, he's a fucking prick. He doesn't know what he's doing. He never shows up. He's here today with his hair combed because you were coming. He brought us russets. Doesn't know what to deal with him. Fuck him. Just thought you should know.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that dude that they're talking shit about will come up to you later and go, hey, man.
We're about to fire Jason. He's been a terrible employee. He smokes on his lunch break, talk shit, brought russets. And I'm like...
I went to a job just like... And that's when I realized I'm more of a counselor. And then I started kind of just calling it coach. You know, like on LinkedIn, I fuck around and call myself Coach
Smart.
E or whatever or something. And so... I went to it's funny you bring that up.
You should start having a whistle.
Yeah.
Bro, you should start rocking with a
whistle. You got
whistle.
the belt. I got the whistle.
You look so good with a whistle, bro.
I might do that.
That'd be sick.
Should it be gold or silver?
Silver.
Okay, silver whistle.
For sure.
I went to Utah to a fucking hemp facility that had 10,000 square foot of indoor hemp for smokable flower. And they had fucking 50,000 square feet of new greenhouse going up, all in. And I got to that site. And the greenhouse wasn't up, but they wanted me there anyway. And I was on the ground, and the dude taking me out there, the owner, investor, money guy, flies in, picks me up, and he's like, yeah, the guys, and I don't know about these guys and these guys. And he's got a right to worry about his team and understand it. He doesn't even live in the same state that his facility's at. And so I get to the site, and the one dude comes up, hey, let me pull you aside. And just this fucking guy, you know what I mean? And then the dude that he was talking about, that guy, a little while, pulls me aside, and he goes, these fucking guys, blah, blah, blah. And then a third guy goes, hey, man, can I go to dinner with you tonight? I really got to talk about some shit. And I get to dinner, and it's just like, blah, of all the people and shit and the culture and how fun. And I got back to the hotel room to the investor dude or the money guy, and I go, look, you got some fucking tough decisions to make. And he goes, no, I don't. I'll fire the whole fucking crew or whatever. And I was like, okay, you know, I guess I got too much heart sometimes because I don't really think like that, you know?
No, you're thinking like, oh, how does this person feel?
Yeah.
What's it like for them? But like, it doesn't matter.
The corporate side doesn't give two fucks. They don't care about me either. And so I was just
no, they just want to take what we have and take whatever information you're giving or that you can have, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. And so when I left that job, I was like, wow, I never talked about greenhouses. We didn't talk about cultivation plans, strategy, nothing. It was just a constant dump on everybody and how fucked up it is and how are we going to, and I was just like, whoa. So, I mean, it is never been that bad since, but it is a level of somebody does pull you aside, and we always find out who the weak link is and that kind of shit. But at the same time, I try to just move past that and work on communication, because I found a lot of people have meetings and they have all these big meetings every week or whatever, but they just kind of like go over fluffy shit. And I'm like, we're not talking about, you know, ultimately the plant health, or we're not talking about the core issue to get to this. And we're not talking from department to department, how we can all work together on fixing this issue or making this issue better or whatever. It's just like, blah, and everybody's like, okay, next, blah, you know, you're just like,
it's poisonous. That's why your plants look like shit.
Yeah. And I'm like, fuck. Okay.
Another thing we were talking about, and we'll finish up with this part of it, is like a lot of critics out there. A lot of people like want to feel like they can like talk shit to you or have a decision in what you're doing and way you make money and the decisions you make. And we were talking about something earlier where I just don't think a lot of people share the same point of view that we do, you know? And like, I'm not going to places and doing that stuff for the people there that I don't know. I'm going to these places because of my love and my respect for the plant and how much I like the plant and how well I want to see the plant do in these different applications.
100%.
You know, and a lot of times I'm just speaking for myself, like, I can't believe you would go help them. And do you know who the fucking owner is of that company? And they're tied to this and this one thing, and who knows if it's even fucking true, but it's like from the very beginning, like I serve the plant. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep.
First and foremost, I work with the plant every day. I serve that plant. I'm going there because it's unjust to me to think that there's gardens and this plant's being disrespected and grown in a shitty capacity, and it's not able to perform and do what it's supposed to be, and people are going to smoke fucking mediocre, compromised medicine.
Yep.
So like, it's very important that all you fucking haters and you tools out there know that, like, this is what it comes down to. I represent the plant. I'm going there as a coach, as a counselor, the same way that you'd see it in a prison program. Like, those plants to me are like imprisoned.
They are.
And I'm fucking there to try to make that experience as good as it can for them. And I have no problem getting paid while doing that.
I love that you said that, because that's what I've had to say lately. And I've had to block a few people because I don't have time for the nonsense of the shit. And for people to act like I'm backstabbing the community or the culture or going against or whatever, like, how I make my money and how I spend my money are two different things. I might make my money from corporate cannabis, but I sure as fuck spend a fuckload of it on community. I buy weed at dispensaries from small farmers. I fucking throw events for small farmers. I was, handing farmers money for their trim when the other big companies that they invested in for their flower weren't paying them and shit. And so besides all the greenhouse shit and all the cool stuff we did that way, I've fucking put my dues in, I feel like, and I'm not taking them back, and I'm not giving them up or selling them out. Like you said, when I go to a facility, I focus on the plants, and that's why I'm hired to do. Like, they want to grow better weeds, so I'm there to do it. Sure, I got to work with some head growers and things, but I'm not spending my time in an office. I'm not going to boardrooms. I'm not making decisions on the trajectory of the company or whatever. I'm there trying to see healthy plants so that consumers can get some good fucking weed, because legacy smokers, typically, even myself, don't go to dispensaries, but I found some good deals in Nevada County from some Nevada County farms. And I found myself also not wanting to bug farmers as much to go get some weed. Like, it's always been my thing to go, hey, and go to the farm and just get a bag or whatever. And I started going, man, I don't know. I just don't like bugging people when I get older or something. I got a couple of people that I need to go hit up because they're like, come by anytime. And I want to, but
and they want to see you.
Yeah, the price of weed got so low, and the shit's in the dispensaries, and I was just like, man, I can get these small farms in Nevada County. A lot of people, when they think of small farms, really hyper focus on the triangle, and that's cool and everything, but we got a lot of small farmers everywhere. In Sonoma County, fucking Nevada County, where we are, over in Calaveras and shit like that. And so the small farmers are definitely struggling. But one thing for the small farmers to know, the big guys are going out left and right too. This cannabis the industry isn't just taking out small farmers. Like, there's 28 farms for sale in Salinas, who knows, across the rest of the state. And so, I mean, the big guys are going down too. So if some of the smaller ones can hang on, there could be light at the end of the tunnel. But, I can't predict the future, but I just know that without growing super dank, you're not going to be in it for very long at all anyway.
Yeah, well said. Brother, thank you so much for taking the time and coming and having this conversation with me and visiting. And you've done a lot for me in my progression in cultivation and played a big impact in my life. If you look back on what I was doing and how every one of those steps was monumental in my forward progress, and always before we even met each other, and always was answering my DMs and all the questions that I had, and fucking the whole industry, we salute you.
I appreciate you saying that, and thank you. It's very humbling, and I'm super inspired by you. You went from kind of the quiet dude learning shit to the guy that jumped out on the front lines and is really teaching shit, and very inspiring at what you're doing, and motivating. And I like your attitude about it all. And it's kind of funny, Hall of Flowers, I don't know, years ago, you were like, hey, and me and Fabian were there from TG and Beard Bros. And you were just, hey man, I want to just say hi and say what up. And you know, and I've kind of been laying low a while because I went through some shit. And then like, it felt like a week later, it's like, cut the check, fucking. And I was like, boom, look at my bro. Like,
Yeah.
let's fucking go. It kind of made me go, wow, I'm sitting on the sidelines here. I got to get, you know, so you motivate all of us and,
Hell yeah.
and inspire us all to do better. So from one homie to another, thank you.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Eric.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.